Okay, time for another video. Let me just pull it out a little. So, let's talk about the symbolic life. Let me just move the camera a little. There we are, that's better. Talk about symbolic life, yeah? Let's see what C.G. Jung wrote about having a symbolic life, what it means, yeah? So this is C.G. Jung, the symbolic life. You can see them, these traveling tourists, always looking for something, yeah? Most of us are like that. Always in the vain hope of finding something. On my many travels, I have found people who are on their third trip around the world. Looking. What are you looking for? Uninterruptedly. Just traveling, seeking. I'm seeking. I met a woman in Central Africa who had come up alone in a car from Cape Town and wanted to go to Cairo. What for? I asked. What are you trying to do that for? And I was amazed when I looked into her eyes, the eyes of a haunted, a cornered animal, seeking, always in the hope of something. I said, what in the world are you seeking? What are you waiting for? What are you hunting after? You know, most of us really are like that. I was like that for many years. I was seeking, looking, traveling, moving from place to place. What was I looking for? You know, until I realized, I think, in the early 90s, when I started to have these huge dreams that were revealing to me that what I was really seeking was already within me. Until that time, I remember I moved from Adelaide to Melbourne, then I moved from Melbourne to Perth, then I moved houses many times, as you do when you're young, when you're working. Always seeking, always looking, always needing something new, something exciting to happen. Otherwise, life felt meaningless. And this is what society encourages us to do. You know, we get bombarded with this information from TV and now social media. You know, go and travel here, go and see this. I wrote about this once, that, you know, remember my comment about the bucket list? And all these bucket lists, people write, oh, you know, I will travel to Africa, I will travel to India and find a guru, I will travel to Tibet and see the highest mountain and meet a Buddhist monk or go to a Buddhist monastery. And I mean, some people even put on their lists, I will travel and visit a cave filled with amethyst crystals. But what I found always is that no one ever actually puts on that bucket list that I will go inside my own inner cave and find finally what I'm looking for. Do you know? There is none of this. Always only the extroverted value is placed as most important. The more introverted our inner lives are not important. And this is what Jung is writing about regarding this symbolic life. So let's go and keep reading more, yeah? I said, what in the world are you seeking? What in the world are you seeking? What are you waiting for? What are you hunting after? She is nearly possessed. She's possessed by so many devils that chase her around. And why is she possessed? Exactly, because she does not live the life that makes sense. Hers is a life utterly, grotesquely banal, utterly poor, meaningless, with no point in it at all. If she is killed today, nothing happened. Nothing has vanished, because she was nothing. But if she could say, I am the daughter of the moon, I am the son of the moon, every night I must help the moon, my mother, over the horizon. Ah, this is something else. Then she lives. then her life makes sense, and makes sense in all continuity and for the whole of humanity. This is important. Your life then takes on a completely new outlook. You don't live for your own things anymore. You know, the things that are being bombarded. We are being bombarded with every day. You know, food, eat, and reproduce, and now sex is everything because sex solves all the answers. You know, find the perfect lover, and then if this one doesn't work, find another one. Update your phone, update your internet because it's faster, you're going to be happier. Remember when they were telling us that once we get computers, we're going to work less and we're going to be happier? Are we working less? Are we happier? I think from what I've seen, when I'm observing people these days, people are even more miserable because automation is taking over, for instance, so many jobs that people that used to get 40 hours in one place, full-time work, now it's become permanent full-time. So you have to go to 2, 3, 4 places to be able to scrap together 40 hours work, thanks to automation. So we happier? I don't think so. Anyway, let's go. What else? The easy ride. What else is Jung saying? Yeah, being the daughter of the moon. Something else. Then she lives. Then her life makes sense, and makes sense in all continuity and for the whole of humanity. When you start to dig deeper into the collective unconscious, not the personal unconscious, the things that I've just said. Updating your phone, updating lovers, updating cars, updating homes, moving to a better suburb, updating a career, climbing up the slippery slope of career ladder and all this stuff. But when you start to go deeper, when you start to recover that there's something else in our psyche, the collective unconscious. You know, when I was saying that we have two minds, the rational mind and the and the intuitive mind, well, the rational mind is more to do with your personal unconscious. What you want, what you need, survival instincts, etc. But the intuitive mind looks at things wider and deeper. This is your collective unconscious. This then when you start to live on this level, especially when you have reconnected to the soul, to the spirit, it starts to make your life deeper and wider, and then so you can become a voice of the silent soul, of the silent feminine for the whole of humanity. You become, let's say, a mediator, an agent for the divine for the whole of humanity. You show that there is something more, something deeper, something more important than just simply surviving and then dying. Yeah, and wider. The whole horizon is now spread all over the planet Earth, not just your own little family, your own little country, or your own little tribe, But it's wider, it's deep, and it's mythological. I will give you a few examples in a moment from people who are these agents of the collective unconscious. I'll just finish with Jung. Yeah. Then she lives, then her life makes sense, and makes sense in all continuity and for the whole of humanity when you have a symbolic life. That gives peace when people feel that they are living the symbolic life, that they are actors in a divine drama. That gives the only meaning to human life. Everything else is banal and you can dismiss it. A career, producing of children are all Maya, compared with that one thing that your life is meaningful. That's exactly right. Even remember when some of you might be familiar with the story of Prince Siddhartha of Buddha. You remember when he left the palace, he left his wife, he left his children, he left his position, he left his career, if you like. He left all this behind because something else deeper was calling to him. And then he became a voice for the silence feminine, for the soul. He became an agent trying to teach people how to recover that, how to do it yourself, how to find that meaning, the deeper meaning in your life. Because the meaning that you find, if you find it in collective unconscious, the intuitive mind, it goes beyond this life. Your life, it stretches now from this to the next. There is no interruption. In the old days, when some 5,000-6,000 years ago, in the Neolithic, up to the Neolithic, when people were buried, the bones were buried separately. That is to say, the bones were person was left to be eaten by the animals, for instance. The flesh was removed and bones were collected, but the bones were not collected and placed. Let me have a look at the time. The bones were not collected and placed as a whole skeleton, but they were placed within the community, within the ancestors, if you like, the skull to the skulls, the ribs to the ribs, and the shims to the shims. You know what I'm saying? It was collective. You were returning to the collective. But later, once the collective unconscious, if you like, but later, once the warrior culture started, once the patriarchy took over, the life continued as it did before. That is to say, whatever life you had in this life, whether you were a priest or a king or a warrior, you would continue that in afterlife. So there was no return. Your ego, for instance, your personal unconscious didn't die. You just kept on going. But in the older, much wider, much older tradition, that you return to the oneness. That's what I mean by symbolic life. By symbolic life, you return to the oneness of everything. Underneath all this everyday nonsense, the banal, as Jung calls it, the Maya, underneath all that is the oneness. And that's the whole message. That the mythological mind, the collective unconscious, you're part of that. You're not just separate. We are all one underneath all this. Yeah. So that's what it means by living really a symbolic life. I'll give you a few examples of this. This is Anne Baring from the Myth of the Goddess. Anne Baring, she's a voice for that feminine, for the silence feminine, for the soul, for the collective unconscious, for the oneness that underneath all this banal everyday, updating your phone and stuff. There's something deeper that it's calling to all of us. And this is one of her quotes that I posted some years ago. The imagery of Inanna as the Great Mother suggests that in the Bronze Age, nature was not yet split off from spirit. Spirit being the collective part of us. The life of the earth and everything she produced was sacred. Plant and animal, sexuality and fertility were all her epiphanies, or the showing forth of the being of the goddess. Whatever existed was the life of the goddess manifested as the life of plant, animal, and human being. One divine life was incarnate in the life of each and all. One mother was the source of everything. That's the symbolic life. Anne Baring is living a symbolic life. She's not talking about herself, her own problems. She's 90 odd years old and she still gives interviews and does webinars and whatnot. Hardly ever would she talk about herself, her own problems, her hard life that she had when she was younger, and all this depression that led her to eventually to becoming a Jungian and all this and all that. Do you hear me talk about my own life that much? Nothing. Hardly ever. Even in the book that I wrote, Where We Dreamed the Single Dream, where I go into what happened in my personal life, everything is underlined by the collective, by the oneness, by the spirit, by the divine. That my whole life, you could say, was predestined from the beginning. Because I'm intuitive, I never lost touch with it. So it was always there. I always had this connection to it, and that showed forth in my life, in my art, in my paintings, in my poetry, and in my writings now, in my books. Everything underneath all that is this oneness of the reality, that we all appear different on the surface like plants, but underneath we are all roots deeply within the same sacred ground, the collective unconscious oneness. Yeah. So that's one example. Another example, Jung is an example of living this symbolic life, this meaningful life of, being a voice for the soul, for the feminine. And Bering is another. And I'll give you another example. This is Kabir. He was also an example of this life living something deeper, wider, something more important than just running around and traveling or collecting things. So this is Kabir. Are you looking for me? I am in the next seat. My shoulder is against yours. You will not find me in the stupas, nor in the Indian shrine rooms, nor in cathedrals, nor in masses, nor in curtains, not in legs winding around your own neck, not in eating nothing but vegetables. When you really look for me, you will see me intently. You will find me in the tiniest house of time. Kabir says, student, tell me, what is God? She is the breath inside the breath. So there's another one, a mystic, a poet that lives that deeper life, the more meaningful life. You have everything that you need already within you. When you have that everything you already find within you, and you find the center, and when the inner voice, when your intuition reactivates, your inner voice starts to activate, and it talks, and you start to be creative, because that's what really happens. You need to be creative in some way. You can write, you can paint, you can sculpt. You have to put that information in some way. One way I showed you before is when I'm reading, I can be reading anything, and then words, between words, start to happen. Well, I'm recentering this way. It helps me to clear my mind. I'm recentering this way, and then words start to jump out me, and I underline that and I make a little poem. Sometimes just 1 or 2 lines, and that's enough. Yeah. Actually, I bought a new book. I was complaining that I'm running out of books because I've read them all. That's the way I recenter. I just and everything is so underlined that there's no room in some books for me to read it again. So I can go through that process of recentering and writing something new. Because you can use the same book over and over and over. The process is the same. It's just to recenter yourself, and then words will come. Information will come. You make a connection to the inner self, to the divine, and then things happen. Creativity flows. So I've bought a new book. This is Catafelke by Peter Kingsley. Huge book, very expensive. And there's a lot of sitting and writing in between words here. I have heard few things about this book. It's kind of controversial. I think Jungians can comment on this. I think from what the reviews I've read, I think Peter Kingsley is right. Jung was still connected to this deeper life, to this symbolic life. But many Jungians are no longer. They simply just regurgitate. Like I said before, imitatio Jungi now. Jung was complaining about imitatio Christi, and now we have imitatio Jungi. It's not enough. You have to make your own way, your own connections to it. Jung is an example, but you don't copy and paste it. You have to go your own way and find your own way to reconnect to it. So this is, there will be new poems, put it that way. So this is Kabir. Have I got another example for you? I do, yeah. Okay, this is female Sufi mystic Rabia of Basra. You might have heard of her. I've quoted her a few times. And this is what she says. How long will you keep pounding on an open door, begging for someone to open it? Exactly. This is what Jung was saying. That's exactly what he was saying. How long will you keep pounding on an open door, begging for someone to open? And that's symbolic life. When the door is open, when the crack is made in between this world and the other world of the spirit, creativity comes. You become creative. Remember how Jung was just even painting on the walls? I painted on the walls. Painting on the walls, and he wrote so many books, and he had this red book and black book. I don't know how many colors there are, really. I haven't read them. Like I said, I use the books just to, make my own reconnection, center myself, and make my connection to the soul, to the spirit, so it speaks through me. And regarding this, I remember writing something. I was centered, and I remember writing something. It came through at that moment, and it says, "It's not important what you say, but what is said through you." You see, that's symbolic life. You become a mediator between the afterlife and this life, between the soul and community. Do you remember my dream? What are we going for time? Okay. Do you remember my dream when I climbed to the top of the mountain? Again, because I've been there many times, that's the center. And there I found Jung, who was sitting and talking to someone. He's smoking his pipe. They were sitting around a table, a square table, by the way. Two of them across each other, and there they were. And I came along and I started spreading my tarot cards. And before I was able to lay the 3 cards that I normally do, Jung took the cards from me and he says, "I'll do it." And he spread 3 cards. And in the middle was Prince of Wands, I remember. 6 of Wands, 6 of Wands, which to me means victory. That you have managed to overcome your ego, if you say, your outer influences, all the things that pull on you from outside everyday life, and you have managed to bring your attention to the center. That's why it was in the middle. 3 cards, the opposites, and the third one in the middle that mediates between the two. And he said to me, "This is what you have to communicate to the people." That was a simple message. That's what you are. That's symbolic life. Not your own personal. I know how difficult life is, how much more things are expensive now, the inflation. I'm aware of this. I have to buy groceries every day. Some things have gone over 100, 200%. The politicians are lying about the inflation. It's very difficult, especially for some people that don't have a lot of money, like myself. So you have to do less with more. But really, when you make that connection to that symbolic life, to the soul, to the spirit, you are looked after. I've made videos about this as well. You are not going to be rich, you're not going to be famous, but you're going to have enough. Something happens. Yeah? So that's symbolic life. That's what it means to have a wider, a more important life, a more fulfilling life. A life that doesn't end when you die. It continues after that. You see? You become not only an envoy here for the soul, but you continue when you return to the oneness. You see, when you return to the one, it's not a surprise to you, if you like. You know what to expect because you have been shown. Your connection to there is all the time. I will share with you, perhaps on the next one, I will share with you my own journey to where the dead go and what it looks like. It's very similar to the ones that people have described, the process of dying, the going over to the other side. And what I saw there is, there's nothing to fear about death. And this is where we go to be one, to realize our oneness. Yeah. So that's the meaning of the symbolic life. All right. That's what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.